The intense reaction on both sides to the Kyle Rittenhouse acquittal. There were small, peaceful protests outside the courthouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin overnight following the verdict.
The 18-year-old cleared of all charges in the shootings of 3 people. Rittenhouse with an emotional reaction in court, seen nearly collapsing after the verdict was read, later seen smiling as he drove away from the courthouse.
But the reaction was very different for the families of those killed by Rittenhouse, who shared their heartbreak and anger. We begin our coverage with ABC's senior national correspondent Terry Moran in Kenosha. Terry, good morning.
Good morning, Mona. Kenosha is quiet this morning. It's quiet all night. This verdict wasn't unexpected. You could feel it coming. But the emotional reactions to this case that divided the country were still so intense. Joy and relief on one side, sorrow and even despair on the other.
This morning, Kyle Rittenhouse is a free man.
The first count of the information, Joseph Rosenbaum. We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the second count of the information, Richard McGinnis, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
The 18-year-old trembling with emotion as all 5 counts were read out.
As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
The verdict from the jury unanimous, not guilty on all charges. Moments after the verdict, Rittenhouse shared his relief, as seen in this Tucker Carlson Originals trailer.
How do you feel, man?
The jury reached the correct verdict. Self-defense is not illegal. And I believe they came to the correct verdict.
The jurors, 7 women and 5 men, sifted the evidence and law, deliberating for roughly 26 hours. Rittenhouse claimed self-defense after he shot and killed Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber and wounded Gage Grosskreutz during a protest last year over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. After the verdict, Rosenbaum's fiancé spoke out.
In this case, it feels like the victims' lives don't matter, and I don't think that that's acceptable. And that's what's on my heart today.
And the parents of Anthony Huber echoed that pain. It sends the unacceptable message that armed civilians can show up in any town, incite violence, and then use the danger they have created to justify shooting people in the street. This trial sparked a national debate about self-defense and vigilantism. Rittenhouse traveled across state lines and armed himself with an AR-15, choosing to go to those protests.
Kyle was a hero when he decided to clean graffiti off of walls and protect the police and raise money for them. Kyle was a hero well before he raised a gun in self-defense.
However, for many black Americans who believe that a black man who did what Rittenhouse did would have been treated differently in court and on those streets, this verdict was painful.
Today, the scales of justice was weighed in the hands of the oppressor.
Come on.
The scales of justice did not serve to be equal today. The scales of justice did not prove that equality exists here in America.
President Biden, who called for peace, responded just moments after the verdict, expressing his faith in the justice system.
I stand by what the jury has concluded. The jury system works, and we have to abide by it.
And overnight, there were scattered protests across the country. In Kenosha, a few dozen demonstrators gathered outside the courthouse. In Portland, Oregon, the sheriff's office declared a riot. Protesters smashed the windows of some businesses.
We stand with Kenosha! We stand with Kenosha!
While in New York City, demonstrators marched across the Brooklyn Bridge and gathered outside the Barclays Center, protesting the acquittal.
Immediately after the verdict, Kyle Rittenhouse and his family left Kenosha to spend some private time together. And while he has been found not guilty of these criminal charges, he still could face legal consequences. If the families of the people that he shot choose, they could bring wrongful death actions, a civil action, if that is what they want down the road. So this may not be over for Kyle Rittenhouse and maybe for Kenosha as well. Whit?
All right, Terry Moran for us. Thank you.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.